Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the True Church of Jesus Christ with his Latter-day Saint. Praising the Lord for those that keep filling them up with stool and urine on a daily basis. And we're going to be talking about the light that shines in the darkness, the dark root of material creation, which is known as the beast. It's wrapped around by a big dragon. And I'm going to keep that motif there too, because that's what God is very serious about as well too. John chapter 1, I am the light that shines in the darkness. So just a reminder that darkness is material creation, just like the roots of a tree. And we have to make our way up back to God, out of the kingdom of illusion, which is just the belly of the beast. And also the body is encaged in the beast as well too. So that's what the flesh is known as. And we're going to go through a little bit of scriptures and get the idea now of drawing. So what's now being under the belly of the beast and away from God, just living mortal material conditions. And just like the root of a tree, how it draws up the water, how it draws up the nutrients from just in the soil, it only has those things to draw from. So it doesn't have the outer world or like the above ground to draw from, or you could say the kingdom of God. So just like the human being, it's the roots of the tree, and it only has the material modes of nature. So when Eve ate the apple and she was exposed to the flesh, all of a sudden, good passions and ignorance, see those modes of attachment to the mind that the mind fixates itself on, is what got exposed. So human, you could say the roots of the tree. So the roots of the tree got exposed, and then that's where their attention went to. So you could say the fall from grace. And when that happened, they, quote unquote, already died. See, when they ate the apple, death was already in the false mode of nature. That's why it's called the false ego, because it believes in death, and it has the good passions and ignorance now only in matter that inside your mind attaches to. So good form, and it's only interested in tasting things good, seeing things good. So that's the thing with the material spell. Or as Brother Paul says, the breath air of this world, the life air, it's not, it's an illusion. The real life is that transcendental emptiness, nothingness, and void. Not even the breath you breathe is real. So that goes more into the books 1 and 2 in Adam and Eve, and that's just higher mysticism as well. It's to say that this world is complete illusion. It's just the bottom of the tree, and it's in darkness, and none of it doesn't exist. None of it. So that's really following the pathway to God, and God will give you that type of knowledge if you're going to follow God all the way. So that's if you could actually deny yourself, stop playing the video games. Even that's the easiest part. It's just the simple form, habit, effect, and behavior. See, there's not a lot of bad people in the world. There's just a lot of ignorant people. And when ignorant people are engaged in ignorant things, it just makes them dull. Their intelligence dulled. Their creativity also dulled. That's what Brother Paul says, worshiping idols. So if you're sitting there watching your TV, watching your Disney Channel, watching your Netflix, it dulls your intelligence because the focus, the worship, you see the attention is now focused on the outer world, and all the eyes want to see is something good. So like the Friday night, let's watch something good, honey. See, that's the material spell. Why does the mind want to enjoy something good in the first place? See, people aren't really too inquisitive enough into these things. So that's what the Bhagavad Gita reveals. That's what Eve ate, is the apple of good passions and ignorance. And even though people want a good Friday, see this whole emphasis on good. Why? It's because of it's the fall from grace. It's the false ego, and now the mind is all it does is it knows death and darkness, and it just attaches itself to just mundane good objects. So that's the thing about breaking out of this human conditioning. It's see, that's the thing with once you take away people's gods, their former worship, like their video games. When you take the video game away from the children, they start crying, and they don't know what else to put their attention to. So that's one thing with God and prayer. At first, just like Jesus Christ says, right? If you're not interested in God and prayer, sure, he could take away some of those mental habits, like one demon being removed, but then the demon comes back with 7 more demons and makes the house even more filthy. So that's an idea of, like, let's say the guys that are alcoholics and go on the 12-step program, and then they keep going on that 12-step program. Well, that's the one habit removed. They might feel good. See, now they're feeling righteous. That's the spiritual relationship now. Righteousness enters their consciousness, removes a false pattern from being in the material world, having attachment to form and effect. But if the person now, right, he gets a little bit righteousness, he doesn't know where that comes from prayer and meditation, from the spiritual worlds, from the kingdom of God, from being on the above the root of the tree, he's just going to go back into gambling. He's just going to go back into his sins. That's what Brother Paul says by being under the law. Oh, what a wretched person I am, that the good that I want to do, I cannot do those goods. Why can't I do good? Because I got a sense of sin in me. And the only way to get rid of that material spell is by prayer. So people don't even know they're under a material spell. It's a spell because the mind is just so ingrained habit and behavior into this TGIF society. What do we do on a Friday night? Well, good. It has nothing else. See, that's the thing with human beings now. It's just ingrained into this conditioned society of a good pastime on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it doesn't have one anymore. The human beings don't have a good pastime anymore because they can't fill it up with good. Good comes from the Spirit, and good is actually good qualities: discipline, courage, faith, hope, love. That's invisible. Good. So when one of the guys asked Jesus Christ, "Good sir, what do we need to do to get into the kingdom of God?" Jesus Christ said, "Don't call me good, because there's only one good, and that's the invisible, which is God." So we don't have any good in society because that's more mundane good. That's the false ego. People are attached to wanting to watch a good movie on a Friday night, form and effect, and none of the movies are good anyway, so I don't know why people are still watching them. People are crying about the NBA being garbage. All the professional sports out there is crap because the athletes suck. But they're still watching it. Why? Conditioned consciousness. The rulers of this world, even just this, like your corporate oppressors, they just guide people right into the next video game, right into the next Xbox system, and the people just go right for it. They're conditioned, and people think that they're smart. Oh, they're not sheeple, or they're not troglodytes, but they're running right to the Xbox. They're running right to the next PlayStation. They're running right next to the movies out there. Why is their attention being so focused on this outer world, being guided around like cattle? That's because the conditioned consciousness. That's because your corporate oppressors, see, they know a little bit about psychology, your Sigmund Freuds and your Edward Bernays. They know how this attention works. And that's how they guide people into good, but it's mundane good. See, people are just guided into material possessions. So that's what they do on a Friday, Saturday night. They just gather around with their material possessions. Usually now it's just getting drunk, doing nothing. So that's why society is messed up, because it doesn't have any good in it, and only good comes from the invisible. And that's what it's like being in the bottom of the tree. That's material conditions. And as you can see, society doesn't have anything to draw from. That's what's being like in the root of the tree. It doesn't have anything to draw from. And its true source is God. So we can see other cultures. The Renaissance. We go back, 500 years. Why was that culture so potent in art, literature, philosophy, music, even just architecture? Oh, because they had a renaissance. The spirit of God was recognized again. And then the Ninja Turtles came. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, Raphael. But they weren't Ninja Turtles yet. They were real guys. And they were geniuses that all believed in God. So that's why they had a renaissance. It's because they had this ancient scripture known as the Hermetic text come to Italy, and they're like, holy crap, what is this? It was hidden. So that's what a renaissance was. And that's why you can see certain epochs of time, society flourishes. It's not because of a race of people, it's because of God. And because this society is godless, atheist, they don't have anything good. That's why the movies suck. The music is terrible. Only Tool's the good band nowadays. What else? Sports is garbage. Your athletes friggin' suck. You're not gonna have a Wayne Gretzky anymore. All these guys are just overpaid pretty boys. And they all cry about how much money they're making too. Boxers, they're all garbage. Tyson Fury punched himself in the face. If you compare these guys now to like, guys in the 40s, 30s, that's a different breed of animal. Sugar Ray Robinson fought 200 times. He has 101 knockouts. That's unheard of. There's a different breed of animal back in certain times. So now he's dried up. His wrestling sucks. His boxing sucks. His movies suck. Why? Because culture comes from God. And only God's the creative principle. As you can see, God doesn't want to shine down his creativity on the Tyson Furies because they suck. He doesn't want to as you see, Hollywood's on strike because they're just money-hungry garbage actors anyways. Who's popular in Hollywood nowadays? Just The Rock? Yeah, you know what? When I was a kid, we had everybody there. There was Hollywood and all the other past stars. Now there's nobody. Same thing with the music. Who the hell is popular now? There isn't such an artist out there. It's just these idiots conditioned into the moron style of music nowadays. And it goes by the times. As you can see, the hippies had their time. Yep, there's like 100 million hippies all listening to Hendrix. They died. Now there's about 100 million morons listening to garbage rap. And they're going to die. As you can see, none of this prolongs itself because it's not creative. See, like the things like the Renaissance, the art, that never dies. Men still look at those things with high prestige because quality minds went into it. So the thing with this tree being in the beast is it doesn't have the creative potential like God. It doesn't have anything actually. It just draws from darkness and certain epochs of time, as it's explained in Ezekiel 1. God will open up his kingdom. And it appears as like it gives the description in Ezekiel, but it appears as like a chariot, cherubim, the four-winged creature. That, when God opens up that's when you could say the Renaissance happens. All right? I'm just giving you guys an idea of when God interacts with society. That's when we have creativity. Here it is. So in the dream, he had, where was it? The vision of the cherubim. There was, this is verse 5, chapter 1. 4 living creatures that looked like this. Their form was human. Each had 4 faces, 4 wings. And their legs went straight down. Their faces were like each of the 4 had a face of a man. But on the right was the face of a lion. On the left was the face of an ox. Finally, each had the face of an eagle. See, he's describing these certain epochs. And not only that, but a certain plan that God has. So those type of things you can see as societies flourish and grow over time. Well, as you can see now, Italy's it's useless right now. So why aren't they still in a renaissance? Well, that's because God, see, with this description of his kingdom interacting with this world, his kingdom left. And the Italians now are just eating spaghetti and enjoying their stupid soccer. And they're useless people. They don't have any spiritual consciousness. Just like the day and age now, all humanity is pretty much useless. Because God has not went into the roots and started doing the, recreation again. That's what the judgment day of the Lord's all about now. As you can see, only creativity. So that's also the thing with God in your life. Only creativity is going to happen in your life too. That's what humanity is. Also, he's in a root of a tree. He has nothing to draw from. There is no there's no light down there. God is the light, love, creativity. Where's the light in the roots? It doesn't have any. That's why the human being draws from nothing. And he always has nothing. The human beings, if you leave them out in the middle of nowhere, right, like a savage, like the savages we have on Earth, they end up eating each other. The human beings they don't have anything. I'm trying to get more. See, the savage, if the human being was a good example of nature and life, then why don't the savages have anything good? Technology, intelligence, all that comes from God. That's why God, there's two atoms, you could say. There's the human being, and then there's spiritual consciousness. And the human being, just left alone in time and space, they end up eating each other. They don't have any other way. They end up sacrificing, killing each other. Yeah, that's what happens without God, intelligence, wisdom. That's also what it says in the Colburn Bible. When the earth got destroyed and reformed, all wisdom was gone, intelligence, men were just savage animals. That intelligence comes from God. Or else the human beings left just doing drugs, not doing... That's the human being. He's useless. If I can't make my example even more clear to you, how useless the human being is without God, then the analogies that were given should be made more example. The light that shines in the darkness. That's why the human beings left in, Timbuktu, they eat each other. They don't progress in technology. They don't progress in morals. See, Mother Nature doesn't enforce any of these things. The human being left on its own device ends up eating itself. It needs God. So that's the root of the tree. It has nothing to draw from. And that's, here, we'll get into example of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the material forest. They call it the material forest, but to me now it's more just the root of the tree. And down at that root, there's nothing to draw from other than the dirt, other than nothing. The human being, just like John chapter 15, is a branch cut off, withers and dies. It can't do nothing. That's also what it says in John chapter 15. You can't do nothing without God. So here, the conditioned soul, now with mental, you could say, dispositions towards excitement, being greedy. See, these attitudes towards these different mental conditions and behaviors, they create attachment for the root of the tree. So they enter this material world for some material profit. Gradually, they enter into the deep part of the forest. So, more conditioned life, more conditioned living, and they don't know how to get out. Having entered the material world, the pure soul becomes conditioned by the material atmosphere. So you could say just the root of the tree, how it has no creativity, no love, no nothing, which is created by the external energy under the control of the Lord. Thus, the living entity comes under the control of the external energy. Just that dry, dark, damp root of the tree in that environment. That's all it is in human existence out there. As you can see, nothing's going on. It's just a bunch of death. We need the Lord. Or else human beings are all dead on the side of the road, or they're too greedy, killing each other for nothing. So they're under the control of this external energy that believes that the roots of the tree are real, that this time and space is real. That's called the external energy. So living independently and bewildered in the roots, he does not attain the association of devotees who are up on the tree, above the roots, who are always engaged, you could say, in the sunlight of the Lord. Once in the bodily conception, he gets different types of bodies, one after another. So the root can grow into other roots. So that's the idea of like reincarnation. But it's under the influence of the material energy and impelled by the modes of material nature. So good, passions, and ignorance. See, that's Hercules. It grabs the unconditioned soul, so like birth, and then immediately the modes of nature, good, passions, and ignorance, from the apple, from the first fall of grace, and now the illusionary energy of you thinking you have a body, the bodily conception. All of that Hercules is imposing on the I am. That's unconditioned. So that's why we have to go back to our original source, because Hercules is imposing nature on us, the roots of the tree, and it's making the roots of the tree appear real. And the roots of the tree only has good, so good outer objects. That's all. Passions. So it'll really be fixated on those good material objects or good mental conditions. So even like a fighter, right? He might like the fact that he could outsmart people. So that's the thing too. You have to, you have to detach from those. Even thinking that you're clever, thinking that you're smarter, because there's only one intelligence. Remember, there's only one consciousness, and you have to be more clever in self-renunciation and deny thyself to really get into the atmosphere of God. Remember, even competing with people, you're not competing with anyone because there's only one consciousness. So who are you competing against? There's appearance of all these different people, but like a fighter, he should not engage in competition. What he has to engage in, the true essence of martial arts, is discipline, focus, and study. And then applying that wisdom when the fight happens. It's not competing with somebody. That's why they say it's a test of your skill. So the Orient is very good at taking away some of these qualities of competition that are really bad for, you could say, the mind, and creating material attachments, but not in the West. See, what creates more material attachments to persons, to places, to money is things like competition. So if the mind is engaged in competition for an X amount of time, it'll be very hard to break the mental conditioning of competition, let alone what competition was engaged in. See, competition can be engaged in business. Competition can be engaged in fighting. Competition can be engaged in relationships. But the idea is to cut the knot of competition, because it goes against the one consciousness principle, because you're not competing against the one consciousness. So that's again too, detaching from the bodily concept, because now I believe in, I'm just me and I have to fight to prove to somebody else. See, that's bodily concept, and we're cutting the knots of bodily concept. And there's certain traits that if we do not engage in, will help in the mode of liberation. So like competition is one of them, anger, deceit, see, that's why the morality, that's why the Lord says to love the Lord and to love thy neighbor. So why do we love the Lord? Well, remember, the Lord is where I am. And the idea here is we're not going to do things to ourselves or God. So that means hurting ourselves. So we're not going to engage too much in competition. Why? Because people lose. And we hurt them by winning. See, it's all in the realm of duality. And if you take yourself out of competition and you just engage, that's what Rocky Marciano was trying to teach about being focused and having your effort and discipline. So he found, you could say, non-dual knowledge through boxing. You could still box, but he wasn't competing. He was using non-dual knowledge. That's why he was the champ, because he wasn't going in there trying to punch somebody else out. He was going in there using knowledge. The bodily concept was gone when Rocky Marciano was fighting. It's the same thing with Miyamoto Musashi. That's why he took up Buddhism. The bodily concept was gone while he was fighting. He was just using knowledge. And that's what the way is. So you could develop the way through activity, but you have to disengage certain aspects of mental conditioning in order to free oneself from these activities. That might be difficult for the Westerner to understand, but if you don't engage in competition while you're boxing, that is the way. If you engage in competition while you're boxing, that is not the way. I hope you can understand that, because these certain things of evil condition the mind more into this world, especially now that you have to compete and get angry towards somebody else's bodily conception. So that's another thing too with the conditioned consciousness. We have to break out of these things. That's following the way. If you're able to still engage in your activities without a sense of self, that's what that means. So not see, that sense of self is a shadow. When you look at someone, it's almost like an automatic engagement that you have to compete, or you're compelled to compare or measure up. See, that's what the consciousness always does too. It looks and it measures against other people's body, and you have to disengage in those things. The more you disengage in even those subtle mental dispositions, the more you're following the one consciousness principle. And that's when you get to live more in faith, hope, even clarity, intelligence. So that's when creativity, all of those traits happen in the individual once they start disengaging in other traits. So even to perfect martial arts, or to perfect a style or a craft, you're going to have to engage in its higher virtues. So when one starts to let's pick on boxing. Let's say if you want to be a boxer and you start engaging in the service of boxing, learning how to fight, it's good not to engage the moral qualities of resentment, right? So you don't want to fight someone out of anger, resentment, right? That's what keeping the discipline, the craft of martial arts, the professionalism. That's not what's practiced nowadays. See, that's also, you don't have to be a martial artist, but that's also even in your mundane job at work. You know, you're still engaged in an activity, but you can't engage in a sense of competing against others, judging others, measuring others. You know, even if you just do your job with that sense of moral quality and detachment, that will lead you to the way, to the pathway to God. So when you're engaged in your endeavors at your job especially, right, that's when we could keep our mind, our contemplations on God. So when we're on our job, we're not focused on the bodies that we see, the bodily concept of others. We turn away from the bodily concept of others, and we just remember the invisible. There's only one consciousness, and it's invisible. Remember the rules. Love the Lord thy God, where I am. So this is now you can love your neighbor better. How can you love your neighbor? By not engaging in these and bodily concepts, mental engagements of competition, mental engagements of fighting others. You know, that's how you that's now maintaining a purity of mind. That's further devotion. So this is for people out there that want to further devote themselves to the Lord and further devote their minds into purity, into the one consciousness principle. Is to understand that when you engage life, you can't engage now in the bodily concept of others and yourself. If you do, you're just going to be under the impelled mode of the apple. And that's just the material nature. So when we're trying to come into contact with God, we're in the path of liberation, and now we put our thoughts in the invisible. We're not hiding away from anyone. We're still doing our work. We're still in time and space at our job. Except now when we look at someone, we're not entertaining their bodies. We're entertaining the one consciousness. So it's like whatever's, like I said, very easily, that person needs to eat and sleep just like me. That's how you could express love thy neighbor. So you have to embrace the commandments all the time. And that's what brings one more into a purity, an atmosphere of purity with God. So that's also the trick of following the way and being more aggressive in the way, is you'll have more sense of devotion to purifying yourself. So you won't go out there and practice these they're just ill religion, abnormal traits. And Galatians 5 really talks about that, the abnormal traits, right? So this is what we don't want to do with our mind, with our thoughts, when we impose them on others. Where is it here? Oh yeah, idolatry, sorcery, hostilities. See, when the mind's engaged in bickering, jealousy, outbursts of anger, rage, selfishness. See, we're trying to come out of that atmosphere. That's the roots of the tree. So the roots of the tree kind of draw from idolatry, sorcery, rivalry, dissension, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies. Nothing. Right? So that's like the roots of the tree. That's the material mode of nature. So when you come under the spell of the material mode of nature, all the dirt and the roots have to draw from is just selfishness, jealousy, bickering. And when you don't engage in those things, when you're at the door of your consciousness and you don't engage others with those things, then we come into contrast with the spirit. So now the fruits of, being in prayer, we get the fruits of this, which is joy. So this is now coming out from under the law, or out from under the root, and being now abiding in me, in the tree. So this is John chapter 15. This is what it's like now being in the atmosphere of prayer. Joy, peace, patience, endurance, kindness, generosity, faith. So this is what out of darkness and into the light means. But you have to keep on doing these things. It's a continual standing at the door of your consciousness. But until God makes himself known to you, that's when now God takes over. So you have to practice this day to day. And then John chapter 15, if you keep my commandments, right? If you stay out of the darkness, out of the dissensions, keep your mind pure, keep your mind clean, because you won't say things. If you keep those things, the tongue is the biggest enemy to man. So if he keeps his mind pure, then his tongue will also not keep him out of trouble. But John 14, he who obeys the commandments, verse 21, is the man who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love him and reveal myself. So that's the whole thing that we're doing here, is God consciousness will lift us out of the tree of misery. That's just how the human false ego draws from. He has nothing but misery to draw from. And the Spirit of God will lift us out of the roots, out of darkness, and into the atmosphere of spirit. So that's very important, coming out of miserable conditions, especially suffering. So human beings are used to the root of the tree, where the conditioned consciousness is just suffering. So that's what the Buddha was talking about. As soon as one is born into the material roots, it's just a consciousness of conditioned consciousness, and suffering takes place in there. So that's what Uncle Buddha gave us in his doctrine, that the human mind is just full of suffering. Nothing in it but suffering. And you have to get out of it. You have to get out literally of the root, which is birth and death. So that's more devotion into God, more devotion into the Spirit. And then once God really makes himself known to you, that's when you know you've hit the goal and you won't come back into birth and death. Because then now you're under God, and now God's going to take you more, cleaning your soul out of the bodily concept of life anyways. And that's all done by prayer. That's when you get more devout into prayer. That's when you control more of yourself into commandments. So if you're going to love yourself, you're not going to cause dissension. You're not going to lie. You're not going to cheat. See, that's following the commandments, and you're going to maintain that atmosphere in your mind. That's what keeping your mind pure, keeping the heart pure, because you're not going to do these things to others, create garbage for other people. So that's loving thy neighbor. And when God sees you sufficiently following the commandments, like he says, that's when you get enlightenment. That's when you get God contact. So that's when the sufferings, the conditioned soul, that's when he goes away. See, so by now the conditioned soul may earn some money for the advancement of Christ consciousness. But sometimes the drunks, the alcoholics, unfortunately, the uncontrolled senses, see, they act like an alcoholic, but they're just the uncontrolled consciousness. They plunder his money through sense gratification. They're just trying to spend it to have a good time, you see. This whole good, you have to control that because it's good from this world. So that's more 1 John again. 1 John 15 is have no love for the world. So when you have no love for the world, you're actually following God's commandment of love the Lord thy God, because you're putting your love, faith, hope in the invisible. You're not sitting around there conditioning your consciousness day in and day out playing video games. So 1 John chapter 2, have no love for the world, nor the things that the world affords. If anyone loves the world overtly, like it's okay to be in the world. Yeah, sure, enjoy your ice cream while you're eating it, right? But afterwards, see, the uncontrolled senses, they want more of that sense gratification of that ice cream, the sweetness, and they go out and look. That's the thing you have to be aware of. Carnal allurements, enticements of the eye. So you can't get into that rabbit hole of just sense gratification. Or even if you're in a relationship, oh, it feels good to touch your girlfriend. I know the female skin is very soft. But that's the thing too, it's sense gratification. You can't just have this girl around there because it's more like a pet dog that you like to pet. Yeah, sure, we like to feel things that are soft, but that's just sense gratification. Or people around each other because they're more like pet animals and they like sense gratification? Or are they with each other because of love? That's one thing coming out. Only you can judge the conditioned consciousness. I can judge because I was under the law before. I know what it's like, miserable with no love. Drawing from someone that doesn't have spiritual consciousness or doesn't believe in God in a relationship, you're not drawing from anyone but darkness. Every day is going to be miserable for you. So that's why the relationships, people are mostly together for sense gratification. They want to be power couples. They want a big house. They want to earn money. And then afterwards there's no love. And then you get a divorce with 2 kids. So God will teach you the way, not of sense gratification, control, self-control and discipline. You're gonna have to, that's like starting the car. As you can see, all you have to do is turn the key. You turning the key is that self-discipline and control. Then the car just starts and it works. That's God in prayer afterwards. It just works. Everything comes together. But you need to start. Once everything starts, everything comes together afterwards. And then the desiring, the willing, all that stuff, the conditioned soul, it goes away. And as you can see now, your time with each other, even if you are in a relationship, will be more caring. Be more, at least more loving towards each other. Faith and hope, confidence, secure in each other. Why? Because only God in your spiritual relationship brings that in your experience. It's not because you did it. It's not because you two have good genitalias that work together in the middle of the night. That doesn't produce love. The only thing that produces love is like a chain. You have to forge each link. And that's the only thing. And only faithfulness, chastity, hope, all the things that come from God, not the root. You can't make a relationship, or you can't make a life out of the roots of the tree. That's also what God's saying. The conditioned consciousness is more like the roots of the tree, and it doesn't have anything to gather from. We have to come into God, and the light of God gives us all the mercy, grace, truth, hope, love, and all that stuff. So that's what it's like living in the conditioned consciousness. That's a little contrast more spiritual lessons to plant the germs of God, Matthew chapter 13, have the seeds grow, and then you'll have enlightenment. That's what it produces, planting the seeds of God, is it produces the light that enlightens all men. So thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, take care.